Good morning, Mata Nui, and welcome to a Bionicle Crossover Challenge, where we take something Bionicle and something else, and we mash them together. The point of this, of course, is to see what interesting stories can be created when merging powers and characters. But with all that being said, I hope you find these thought experiments as entertaining as I do. Now, let's set out our rules and meet the lineup. And to help us with this extra special presentation, we have to bring in the big screen. Now, let us begin. On the island of Mata Nui, a Dark Lord named Makuta terrorized small biomechanical villagers for 1,000 years, hoping to force them into worshipping him by using large biomechanical beasts called Rahi that he infected with evil masks, and his own dark arsenal of powers. In this scenario, however, 3 alternate Dark Lords will replace Makuta at the beginning of the 1,000 years, gaining access to his lair and equipment, but not his corrupted masks, powers, or servants. Their mission, should they choose to accept it, is to gain total control over the Matoran villagers in that time. The Dark Lords taking this challenge will be Voldemort from the Harry Potter movies specifically, Megatron from Transformers Prime, and Sauron from Lord of the Rings in the Second Age. We'll break down their abilities later, but first, we need to see what they're up against, because there are 3 main obstacles in their way. The first obstacle is the Matoran themselves. These 4-foot-tall villagers are hardworking, honest, and extremely strong by human standards. Nearly every creature in Bionicle is biomechanical, so assume it's the default unless said otherwise. And the Matoran are no exceptions to this rule, because they are in fact biomechanical. This means that all the inhabitants of the island are more resistant to damage than an equivalent human would be, since they're made out of metal, and because they're robots, they can lift hundreds of pounds with ease. Their main disadvantages are they are a simple folk and kind of weak-minded. Though they can and will fight to the best of their ability if pushed, their willpower is generally lesser than what a normal human would be. They also must wear masks at all times, because if they don't, they quickly tire and will fall into a permanent coma unless they get another mask put on them. With the Matoran now covered, the second obstacle is the 6 Turaga. These are the village elders that lead the Matoran of their respective elemental tribes. They are strong-willed and strong-minded, their main advantage being their limited control over elements and their noble masks. Each Turaga has 1 mask power and their associated elemental power. So the Turaga of stone has the ability to manipulate stone, for example. The Turaga of ice can manipulate ice, so on and so forth. All of them have their unique mask powers though, with the notable ones being the Mask of Illusions, the Mask of Telekinesis, and the Mask of Invisibility. These all do what they say, right? But they are very limited in range and power. So Telekinesis can only lift a small amount of weight a moderate distance away. Physically, they're slightly taller than Matoran, but also slightly weaker, so they rely on their other advantages to make up for that. Now, the last obstacle is a major one, and it's the 6 Toa Nuva. For this scenario, I will be placing the Toa Nuva at the beginning of the 1,000-year timeline, just so it's not a complete stomp against the Matoran and the Turaga. These beings are the heroes of the Matoran and the protectors of the island. They are by far the most powerful force of good on Mata Nui, and they defeated Makuta in the normal timeline. They're also quite strong and versatile, so I will cover them in categories. For the physical stats, I will make it quick because they are the least important. Speed and stamina are about equivalent to Captain America. They can lift 1 ton unaided, and as for their agility, they're kind of like Spider-Man, but to a lesser degree. So they can also dodge stuff at very close range and can leap like 20 feet or so in the air very easily. Like they just do that as a normal way to move around. Lastly, their durability is similar to Iron Man and is by far the most impressive physical stat. They're able to withstand extreme heat, cold, pressure, and physical force. Yet all of this is just the base upon which their true power is built, that being their mask powers and their elemental abilities. So, starting off with the mask powers, and these are really crazy. All of the Toa Nuva have access to 6 Nuva masks, but they can only wear 1 at a time. All these powers can be shared with nearby beings though, with no drop in efficacy. So if one of them is using the Mask of Strength, they can make everyone around them also be super strong. And these mask powers can stack, so if the Mask of Strength shares it with the teammates, they all get strength. If the one with the Mask of Water Breathing shares it, they would all be super strong and could breathe water, so on and so forth. So all 6 of them can share all 6 mask powers and have everyone using all 6 mask powers simultaneously. However, these masks do require intense concentration, as does sharing the powers, so fighting while using an active mask power is extremely difficult. Here are the exact mask powers though. So the first off is Mask of Water Breathing, which gives infinite breathing underwater, and this is a passive effect, so they don't have to think to activate it. Next is the Mask of Strength, which increases their strength massively, no dur. And I mean, this is a massive increase, because they can go from lifting about 1 ton to lifting boulders that are hundreds of tons. And even crazier, this is also a passive effect, so they don't need to concentrate to use this in combat. The next one is the Mask of Shielding, which makes a nigh unbreakable transparent shield that can block effects like lasers or bullets that they can see coming. Intangible effects like increasing the gravity in the area can still get through the shield though. Or if you break the ground underneath the feet, they will like fall and stuff. Next is the Mask of Levitation, which makes the users lighter and floats slightly off the ground, so it just gives them extra maneuverability. The Mask of X-Ray Vision is an interesting one though, because it allows them to see through almost any object. It doesn't work like actual X-ray though, it works more like Superman's X-Ray Vision, where you can just see through stuff rather than seeing like what actual X-ray would show you. And last, but certainly not least, the Mask of Speed. When using the Mask of Speed, you gain massively increased speed, obviously, but the amount of speed is the crazy thing, because you are fast enough to run across the entire island in like 3 minutes or so. And since we know how long the island is, this puts them around Mach 6 at the top speed. However, it doesn't increase reaction time to the same degree. It kind of puts the Toa on autopilot where their body can maneuver around obstacles, but everything that's not directly in front of them looks like a complete blur. So they can't speed blitz and like punch someone multiple times like the Flash, it's mostly just a mobility tool. So this essentially makes them unstoppable when all their mask powers are combined, so the Dark Lords will want to prevent that from happening at all costs, because none of them are going to survive a full-on assault with all 6 Toa Nuva using their mask powers. But that's not the only thing the Dark Lords have to worry about, because the Toa even have elemental powers that are more impressive than their mask powers. Each Toa, like the Matoran and Turaga, is affiliated with one single element. So you have a Toa of Stone, a Toa of Water, a Toa of Fire, Toa of Earth, and a Toa of Ice. Yes, there are redundancies in these elements. No, it doesn't make any sense. The Bionicle writers just decided to do that. However, the Toa can generate, absorb, resist, and manipulate their respective elements massively, which is where the real power comes from. For example, Gali, the Toa of Water, she rides tidal waves that she generates across the desert as just a way to get around. Tahu, the Toa of Fire, turned an avalanche of sand into glass in mere seconds. Like it was raining down on him and he just shot it, boom, all glassed. The Toa of Air, Leiwa, can create mini cyclones at will and just like move people around the battlefield. And in one of the most impressive elemental feats, we see Kopaka, the Toa of Ice, freeze an entire river instantly, and it trapped multiple of Makuta's servants inside of it for a long time. They can, of course, also just shoot basic blasts of their elements like an ice bolt or a fire bolt, and these are pretty effective depending on how much juice they put into them. And they can vary the range and intensity of the bolts that they shoot. And these are very easy for them to do. It doesn't take as much concentration as a mask power to activate their elemental abilities. So it's a super reliable and versatile tool in their arsenal. And in terms of physicality, being able to generate a tidal wave can move a lot more stuff than even just using the Mask of Strength. So for that reason, it is their main way to do all combat. But there's one additional factor, and that's when they all 6 combine their elemental powers, they can trap anyone hit with it into a Toa Seal, which is essentially an unbreakable stone prison that constantly siphons off the energy of whoever is trapped inside of it, making it impossible for them to escape from the inside. So any Dark Lord that is hit with this combo attack will be trapped and cannot do anything, like they can't even move their spirit out of it. So, that is a reliable win condition for the Toa. There are weaknesses, though, and the Dark Lords can exploit these. The first and the most major one is the Toa Code, which is a code the Toa live by that prohibits them from directly killing sapient creatures except in the most dire of circumstances. This means they won't automatically go for the kill shot on Dark Lords. They'll try to take them down, or subdue them, or talk them down, or whatever before going for the kill. It also stops them from hiding or thieving, as it isn't a good role model for Matoran. So ambushes are generally not what they do, and they're not going to use it as a first resort. Another weakness is their Nuva symbols. These are artifacts that when possessed by someone other than the Toa, robs the Toa of all their elemental powers. So if you manage to grab a Nuva symbol, that Toa can no longer use their element in any capacity. However, the Toa knew this and have hidden their Nuva symbols around the island. So if a Dark Lord did want to go that route, they would have to search very hard and long to find the Nuva symbols. And the last weakness is shared with the Turaga and the Matoran, in that if the Toa lose their masks, they are greatly weakened and have trouble focusing on anything. So they have reduced use of their elemental powers, and obviously can't use their mask powers because they're not wearing any. As kind of a side note to this, all their extra masks are located in little shrines at specific temples in the villages, so if a Dark Lord takes over a village, they can remove all the extra masks from the Toa. And so, as a capstone to this weakness section, if a Dark Lord manages to take out even one Toa, that reduces their ability to use their combo masks, and it takes away any ability for them to generate the Toa seal, which shifts the odds significantly more towards the Dark Lord than it is when there are 6 of them. So, with all that being said, let's get into the Dark Lords themselves, starting off with Voldemort from Harry Potter. Voldemort would start off by hiding his Horcruxes around the island and scoping out the terrain. He would notice the normal Matoran would be a physical threat because he is just generally a normal human strength-wise, and the Matoran are stronger than him, like they could crush him like an egg. However, they don't have any defenses against his spells or his apparitions, so he could fly around, dodge them, and hit them with all kinds of curses, and they wouldn't be able to do squat about it. Also, given that Matoran have been mind-controlled on many occasions and are generally weaker-willed, Imperio would be his main tool in dealing with the villages, because he could enslave entire groups of Matoran at a time, and there's very little they could do to get out of it. The problem would be the Toa and the Turaga, as they're both known to have very strong wills, and a single elemental blast or physical strike from either one would most likely kill or severely damage Voldemort. This is where I think Voldemort would turn to more duplicitous tactics by threatening to kill the Matoran themselves, apparating and ambushing lone Toa and Turaga, and trying to hit them with Avada Kedavra or Imperio, as well as trying to steal their Nuva masks or symbols wherever he can find them. The efficacy of this approach is kind of low though, because the Toa have fast enough reflexes to dodge most spells, and even normal humans in Harry Potter can counter or dodge spells, and the Toa are vastly superior in their reaction capabilities. They would also be able to track him when he's apparating because in the movies he leaves a giant black cloud of smoke that they could follow. Especially with the Mask of Speed, it would be hard for Voldemort to truly get away from them. Additionally, Voldemort can't kill too many Matoran because his goal is to subdue them and have them worship him, so killing massive amounts of them kinda defeats the purpose of the whole challenge. It's like we can see in Harry Potter series itself, where he doesn't go around just massacring every single wizard because he wants them to live in fear and he wants to be the ruler over them. So, that would be more of his style and more of his purpose in the challenge to leave as many Matoran alive as possible. A funny thing though, is the Toa's no-kill rule would actually help them in this situation, because if they capture and subdue Voldemort, they won't kill him, and thus his Horcruxes can't be used. He'll just be trapped the entire time. If they hit him with a Toa seal, his soul can't escape because it's in the Toa seal. Additionally, they could just take his wand away and he wouldn't be able to do anything except minor magic, which wouldn't be enough to take out the Toa. And if he does become too much of a threat, they can just kill him. If he resurrects, they just kill him again. Because they'd probably be more on guard and they're like, oh man, we already took out this guy once, well, we can do it again. So if he decides to keep coming back to life, the Toa would gain more experience fighting him, and they would know something is up. So they could either scour the island for his Horcruxes and try to destroy them, which I don't know if they'd be able to do, or they could just wait it out and every time he reforms, they just blow him back to smithereens, then when the 1,000 years is up, they win the challenge. If Voldemort does try to play more defensively, which I think is his best option in kind of an ambush style thing, he'd probably manage to take out a few of the villages or enslave them through Imperio, and he might even be able to take out a Turaga. But if he tries to retreat and hide away, the Toa would track him down, and if they do find him, it's over, because Voldemort would struggle even against one Toa, and against all 6, it's a definite game over. So, if they find him and he's not on the move, he's donezo. Now, with all that being said, I think Voldemort has a low chance to conquer the island. His frailty and his lack of easy kills on the Toa hold him back far too much to see a realistic win, with Imperio's spam and trying to blackmail and threaten the Matoran being his only real viable win condition. Next up, we move to Megatron from Transformers Prime. So Megatron is massive and he's physically more powerful than a Toa and can potentially one-shot them with his arm cannon, which is shown to be super powerful in the show, far above any other armaments that any of the other characters are using. He's also extremely durable, but not particularly stealthy or strategic, relying mostly on brute force and artifacts that he finds to win most of his fights. He'd be similar in strength and durability to a character in Bionicle called Brutaka. However, he would be semi-vulnerable outside of his vehicle form because the Mask of Speed again can give the Toa a massive positional advantage over him, being able to cut him off or just keep up with him at a slower pace. But if he uses his vehicle form, I think this gives him a very good advantage, because he'll be in the air in his jet mode and he'll have total air superiority. Because while the Toa can fly if they combine the Mask of Speed and the Mask of Levitation, it is a very limited sort of flight and not good for open spaces at all. His only major contender would be Toa Nuva, who can fly using the wind, but again, he would be so much faster and a shot from his cannon would pretty much immobilize Lewa. I think Megatron's main tactic would involve strafing villages from the air, dominating local Rahi into following him, or just physically moving them towards the villages to terrorize and isolate them. So he'd just pick up like a giant bull and just throw it at the village, see what happens, right? And he would also try to use artifacts from Makuta's lair, like the Staff of Fusion, as additional offensive options, because we know he likes collecting artifacts. His main problem would actually be killing the Toa though, because his lasers are slow enough to be dodged, kind of like Voldemort's wand, although I believe they're a little faster. But the Mask of Shielding could block the shots. So if he's strafing a Toa, they can just throw on the Mask of Shielding and wait him out, because it will block everything that isn't like destroying the entire ground underneath him. And not being able to hit them with his gun is a major disadvantage, because this is his most reliable and potent weapon, and it would essentially one-shot the Toa, so it'd be a super duper fast kill. Not to mention, he also has multiple ways to lose, because a Toa Seal would take him out, he couldn't be able to get out of it, like all the other Dark Lords. If he got buried, like he did in that one episode, he would also be down for the count. So if he goes into like the Village of Earth, which is in a giant cavern, and it collapses, he would be kind of toasted, because the Toa could just deal with him at their leisure. This would give him an additional reason to stay in the air rather than going on the ground. Going back to his lose conditions though, he could be simply overwhelmed if all the Toa charge him with a Mask of Strength active and they just kind of beat the tar out of him. Or if they just hit him with super powerful close range elemental blasts, or like fire that could like melt through him like a welding torch. This would presumably break his armor, or at least damage him, because he is a very tough guy, I'll give him that. So, Megatron's best bet would be to stay in the air and keep strafing, and when he isolates a Toa, try and drop down and physically crush them with his might, because once a Toa is dead, the Mask Rush strategy is less effective and the Toa Seal becomes completely impossible to do, removing 2 of his lose conditions. And he does have the physical strength to kill a single Toa, like he could compress them like a tin can, I would believe. The major snag in this plan though, is that if there's a giant guy raining bullets down on all the villages from the air, the Matoran and Toa could retreat underground because they have pre-established underground highways and villages, connecting to pretty much every other village. And they could live down there semi-indefinitely, forcing Megatron to come up with an alternative tactic to flush them out. So he could try to physically go down there, but as we've established, that'd be kind of a bad idea, or he could use the Rahi again on the island to try and just overwhelm the Toa. Another tactic he could use is that when Matoran are going out venturing for supplies, he could try to blackmail and capture them, have them turn traitor, and either take out some of the Toa, or just lead them into secret places where he could ambush them. Or, with all this extra time since the Toa are underground being defensive, he could look around the island for Nuva symbols and try to rob the Toa of their elemental abilities, which would give him a very solid win condition. However, these strategies also have flaws, because if he does take the time to go and hunt down all the masks and the Nuva symbols, the Toa Nuva can then take the offense and track him down, try and jump him while he's searching on the ground. So it'd become a game of cat and mouse that's heavily weighted against Megatron. That being said, I would give Megatron a low to moderate chance of winning, because if he does manage to kill even a single Toa, the odds of him winning increase drastically. I just don't think he has a solid way to take out a single Toa, even if they are alone. However, if the Dark Star Saber from the end of the show is involved, then yes, he easily clears the challenge. Nothing would be able to stop him. He would just raise the entire thing to the ground and just destroy every Toa, because that thing is busted out the wazoo. So for all you Transformers Prime fans out there, that's your consolation prize. But now, we move on to the main event. This is the whole reason I started this entire crossover series. It's because I wanted to talk about this. Sauron. Specifically before the fall of Numenor, meaning he has access to his physical form and access to shape-shifting abilities, although he does not yet possess the One Ring. He also brings such notable traits as his cunning, incredible craftsmanship, and ability to exert darkness over an entire land, literally corrupting it like how we see with Mordor. Physically, his base form is below par against the Toa, but I would say is definitely stronger than a Matoran or a Turaga, so he's going to try and avoid direct confrontation as much as possible. How I see this starting off is that Sauron will scout around in his invisible form, or in the shape of a local Rahi, or just like a tiny little fly so that he can't be easily detected. He will see the villages and the power of the Toa Nuva and know that he can't beat them straight up, so he will try to destroy them from within. And with this, he will employ a two-pronged tactic. The first being to spread his evil influence out from Makuta's lair and establish himself as a dark, malevolent force on the island, kind of like he did as the Necromancer persona in Lord of the Rings. However, where he's different from Makuta in this is that he will never actually fight the Toa. He will want to avoid and be as ethereal as possible, because if the Toa do fight him, he will lose, and he will lose hard. So when his corruption spreads, it may work on the local Rahi. If it does, and he's able to gain some semblance of control over them, he can use them to terrorize the villages, just like Makuta did during his reign. And if it doesn't work on Rahi, he will settle for just making the land that he has corrupted uninhabitable and forcing the Matoran away from those areas where it is corrupted to isolate them more inside their villages, keeping them disunited. Once his threat is established as a Dark Lord and as something that needs to be taken care of, Sauron will deploy his second prong of the attack. Because while he is influencing the island, he will learn of the Kanohi masks that all the villagers and the Toa wear, and see that they can grant power. Also, there's a volcano on the island that has extremely hot protodermis magma, protodermis being essentially a super metal that is extremely easy to manipulate and shape. So he could most likely craft great and noble Kanohi, and then he could appear to the villagers as a Turaga named Anatar, Lord of Gifts, sent by the great spirit Mata Nui to fight back the growing darkness with these new masks. Now, the Bionicle universe is no stranger to random powerful artifacts appearing in the nick of time, so the suspicion raised would probably be minimal, especially if Sauron is very charming and wise and affable. He would endear himself to the villagers, and when the Toa and Turaga start using the masks, he would lessen his dark hold on the island, making it seem like only his mask allowed for these victories. But all of them would be deceived, for another mask was made, deep in the fires of the Mangai volcano. The Dark Lord Sauron forged a master mask, and into this mask he poured his cruelty, his malice, and his will to dominate all life. One mask to rule them all, one mask to find them, one mask to bring them all and in the darkness bind them. But not all hope would be lost, as some of the islanders have first-hand experience with mind control and manipulation, and wouldn't be so easily fooled. Toa Lewa specifically has been mind-controlled twice and has become quite paranoid about trusting his own mind. If he brings up this concern after wearing Sauron's mask for a bit, to the Turaga or to the wiser members of the Toa, it might be enough to sniff out Sauron as Anatar, or at the very least keep them from using the new masks. This is where it gets diciest for Sauron though, because if he allows this to happen and is unable to shake the suspicion, the Toa will either imprison him in a Toa seal or destroy him. One of them being the permanent loss, which is the Toa seal, since his spirit wouldn't be able to escape or flee his mortal body, and the other would just waste a lot of time, because he would have to reform and regain his energies, and it would be harder to deceive the Toa in the future. But Sauron does have counterplay. He can shapeshift into any Rahi and keep his intelligence, so he might ambush a lone Toa or Turaga as a powerful Manus crab, taking them out permanently. He could also stoke divisions within the Toa from its more susceptible members like Tahu or Kopaka, keeping them from uniting against him. Additionally, he could steal or sabotage the Toa's other masks so they are forced to only use his own masks, and he wants them to wear these masks for as long as possible because they increase his influence over them and will probably turn them into wraith-like beings if worn enough, just like the Nazgul in Lord of the Rings, at which point they would be under his complete and total domination. With all this being said and all this being considered, how likely is Sauron to conquer the island of Mata Nui? I think it's very likely, as dividing and conquering the Toa is the most effective way to remove their win conditions. Not to mention, Sauron has tricked and deceived discerning heroes before and to great effect, even causing the fall of an entire nation through his treachery. This doesn't mean it's a sure thing though, as pretty much any stray hit from a Toa will annihilate his base form, and even if he does try to ambush a Toa in a strong Rahi form, their full might would still overcome him in that body. This being why deception and evasion would be his most likely plays here. But, as my final verdict, I do give Sauron a very high chance of winning. I think he's clever enough, and I think he's versatile enough to pull it off. Also, I think it's just a sick scenario and story that's been banging around my head for such a long time. But all that being said, that's a wrap on today's Bionicle Crossover. But if you have any worlds that you would like to see Bionicle interact with, make sure to comment them down below. I'd love to get your thoughts on cool matchups as we continue this series into the future. So this is the Brocky Talk Show signing off. Good night, Mata Nui!